Hey guys, and welcome on in for today's video where I want to talk specifically to open things up looking at three brand new national 2020 Democratic primary polls that were just released. They're all painting a pretty good picture for the frontrunner Joe Biden. After I go through this data, and if you'd like to take a look at any of it for yourself, I'll link all of these articles down at the bottom of the video description. But then after that, I want to do a little bit of a discussion talking about the current national picture of the 2020 Democratic primary and if that's indicative of the fact that Joe Biden might run away with this thing, or if there's some roadblocks in place that could potentially make it a bit more competitive. So we're going to start off here with the Harris X, brand new numbers that they just released, where Biden has actually separated himself quite a bit from the rest of the pack, where he's in first place at 29%, and then you have Sanders and Warren each tied at 13 percentage points, and then the rest of the field that's even another step back quite significantly, so all in the mid to lower single digits, where you have Buttigieg and Bloomberg each at 5%, Castro at 4%, Klobuchar, Yang, and Steyer each at 3 percentage points, Booker, Delaney, and Patrick each at 2%, and then Gabbard and Bennett at 1 percentage points apiece, with the unsure part of the electorate being at 13 percentage points. So a pretty strong number there from Joe Biden. Now moving over to this Economist YouGov poll that was just released. And first I want to start off with who the voters are at least considering voting for. And it's actually relatively competitive among the top three individuals, where 50% of people are considering Biden, 49% Warren, 41% Bernie Sanders, and then you take a bit of a step down before you get to Buttigieg at 28%, and then another step down at Klobuchar at 18%, Booker at 17%, Bloomberg at 15%, Yang at 14%, and then it works its way down from there. And then in terms of that first choice option, we can see another pretty strong number here for Biden in first place at 29%, followed by Sanders in second place at 19 percentage points, Warren at 17%, and then another gap between them and the rest of the field in, again, that mid to lower single digits, with Buttigieg at 7%, Bloomberg and Klobuchar each at 4%, Yang and Gabbard each at 3%, and then all the other candidates at 2 percentage points or less. In the third poll that was just released, it's actually showing really strong numbers here, specifically for Biden, in comparison to the last Epsilon Insights poll, where he's pulling ahead even 5 more points, up to 37%. This is one of the strongest polls that we've seen from Joe Biden in a very long time, and his numbers are being driven by whites without college degrees. And then we see Warren taking quite a bit of a step back in these updated numbers from Epsilon Insight, where she's down 8 percentage points in a tie with Bernie Sanders now, each of them at 14%, and then Bloomberg and Buttigieg in the mid-single digits at 6%, and then the rest of the field is at 2 percentage points or less. And then we take a look here at those who are considering voting for these individuals, and Biden is grabbing 64%, Bernie Sanders at 51%, and Elizabeth Warren at 45%, with Buttigieg at 33% and then Bloomberg at 24%, and then it continues to go down from there. And Biden doing well in a lot of these different demographics categories, but you'd probably expect that considering he's in first place at 37% in this particular number here, where whites without a bachelor's degree, he's at 44%, followed by Sanders at 15%. With bachelor's degree, it's a little bit more competitive, but Biden at 28%, Warren at 21%, Bloomberg at 14%. And those who have bachelor's degrees, Sanders down there at just 8 percentage points, which is a number that surprises me a little bit. But this is also a relatively small sample size, where we can see it was 447 respondents. So that's also potentially playing into this. But you'd definitely rather be on the side of Biden, who's showing really strong in this poll, than some of these other candidates whose numbers aren't doing quite as well. And then also the African Americans are doing really well behind that Biden support at 42%, followed by Sanders at 16%. So now I want to do a little bit of a discussion talking about this national picture, where Biden is clearly, in terms of the average of the polls, having a little bit of separation between himself and the other upper tier candidates. And we'll go and take a look at that, and then we'll get to these early states. So I'm going to go over and open up the national average here from Real Clear Politics. And we can see Biden in first place in the average of the polls at 28%, followed by Sanders at 19%. Warren has shown a little bit more weakness over the past couple of months, where she's faded back into third place, just a hair under 15% for her. Buttigieg around 8%, Bloomberg at 5%, Yang at 3.4%, Klobuchar at 3.2%, and then everyone else is below 3 percentage points. So obviously, if we were to have a national primary tomorrow, for instance, then Biden would almost certainly be the front runner and grab the most in the way of pledged delegates. But that's not how this process works. It's going to go state by state, and campaigns are going to either build momentum or perhaps lose momentum based on how they do in these different results. And what could also change this is the fact that they're going to have a debate before each of these first 4 early contests in Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina. And the fact that Joe Biden doesn't necessarily perform the best on the debate stage could possibly hurt him. But then we go into these first couple of states, Iowa, where Biden is currently averaging in 3rd place. That could be a bad moment for him right out of the gate. If he stumbles and performs quite a bit worse than what his national numbers are saying, then that could change this whole race. And then we go to the second state of New Hampshire. And again, the average of these polls from the state of New Hampshire has Biden again in 3rd place. So if he stumbles out of the gate, gets back-to-back 3rd place or even 4th place in some of these areas, that could be enough of a negative narrative for Biden where it could possibly bring him back to the pack in terms of that overall national picture. Now, his saving grace might very well be South Carolina. I'll open that up here in the next tab because fortunately for Biden, it is the last early result before we turn the calendar and go into the all-important Super Tuesday in the early portion of the month of March. And we can see that Biden is head and shoulders above the rest of the pack in the average of the polls from South Carolina, where he's at 35%. Quite a bit of distance between himself and Warren and Sanders, who are also competing with him. But it also could be a situation where if Warren and Sanders are both able to eclipse the 15 percentage point threshold in South Carolina, that they're able to split up the delegates enough where it doesn't appear as big of a dominating victory for Biden. So that's also something to possibly keep in mind. But really, in terms of where things currently stand nationally, I think it's very possible that Biden will recede back to some of these other upper tier candidates based on how the early states of Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada go before we even get to South Carolina. And if somebody like a Sanders or a Warren are able to show really well in those areas, it could possibly pull them into a much closer situation with Biden in terms of that national average of the polls. So that's where we're at right now. But obviously, if you're the Biden camp, you have to be pretty happy about these polls that were just released over this past day. They're all painting a pretty positive picture for him. He hasn't continued to recede in those numbers. He's kind of been staying steady or even gaining back a bit from those numbers. And possibly with this whole Trump impeachment scenario where a lot of these Democratic voters, registered Democrats who are seeing Trump try to go after Biden, that might even be propelling him in a positive direction where his base of Democratic registered voters might be throwing a little bit more support behind him than if we didn't have this whole Trump fiasco with him asking for the Ukrainians to dig up dirt on his political rival being the Bidens. So that's where we're at right now, and that's pretty much going to be the end of this video, guys. Those are the different things that I wanted to touch on in terms of those new polls and just where we're at in that national picture in those early states. If you want more of this type of content in the future, please consider subscribing, and I hope to see you guys back here for my next video.